Welcome back to another episode of the Levine Family Racing Podcast. We are recording this episode on July 21st. Figured we'd get the group back together who has probably done the most podcasts with us. So I'm joined by Team President Jeremy Lange, as well as the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Levine Family Racing, Jeremy Davidson. So it sounds crazy, guys, but we have been back to racing for just over 2 months now when we made our return at Darlington Raceway in South Carolina.
That is great.
So it's that joke I feel like this that we've been going through the last couple of months is, it feels like 2 days ago that we were in Darlington. It also feels like 2 years ago that we were in Darlington. So we wanted to take this episode to kind of go through some of the changes that we have seen during these 2 months. We've had a lot of things unexpectedly thrown at us as a race team. We've seen the sport kind of adapt and move in different ways that we haven't seen it go before. So we just kind of wanted to talk through, give our perspectives on that. So we'll start off here, guys. Since we've been back, our team performance has been better. I would say we've had more highs than we had in those first 4 races. Obviously, we struggled off the bat with some DNFs, some freak luck, but also some less than stellar performances. But since then, we've rattled off, I believe it's 5 top 10s, which is better than the total we had last season. So what, from your perspectives, is some of the reasoning behind that uptick in performance?
I think, first and foremost, I think it gave us time to regroup and just kind of go about and, strategize for the races coming up. We didn't know what they were going to be, but I think it gave Christopher time to kind of take a step back and just refocus. And I think if you talk to Christopher, I think our goal is to come this year and, in his mind, compete for wins and compete for top 5s and be there. Those first 4 weeks definitely showed him that it's hard to win in the Cup Series. And I think, I want to say changing goals, but reestablishing the goals once we got back to racing has been helpful for all of us, including Christopher. And, our goal was to finish and, compete for wins and, but it takes time to do that. And I think, being realistic in our expectations has been helpful and resetting the goals. And I think you've seen putting less pressure on himself to do better and just let it come to him and let it learn. Because being a rookie in the Cup Series, it's tough. I mean, Cole Custer won a race, but it wasn't like he's been competing for wins all year. So the rookie class has had highs and lows. It's a tough rookie class. There's really good rookies that Christopher's racing against and week in and week out. And there's times we finished in the top 10 and still weren't the top finishing rookie. And there's times we finished 15th and been the top finishing rookie. So I think the time was good for our team to take a step back, like we've said in the past, and reevaluate, reset, and refocus.
The other thing I'll add to that is when you look at our sport, we go until November, mid-November, take a break. Everybody really disappears over the holidays, and then you come back in February and crank back up and jump right into the first race of the year, mid-February. And that's where we saw the, first 4 races or so before the break. But in that time of off season, we added a new driver and a new crew chief who had not been working with this team. So naturally, you're going to have a period of adjustment that has to take place. Just so happens that those kinks were getting worked out. And that newness for Christopher, as Jeremy was just mentioning, was taking place in his first 4 races. The break has allowed for those guys and the entire team to be a little bit more cohesive, to learn each other's language, and to be able to work together better and be more prepared as we get out to the track versus that quick window of turnaround with Jason and Christopher coming over and back to the Cup Series.
I'll add one more thing. I also think us not practicing, I think is an advantage for us because Christopher, if you talk to Christopher, he can't lead the team down a path of good or bad based on the car. It is what it is, and he drives it. You're not going down a path or rabbit holes trying to find speed or not find speed You basically use historic information data. You use our alliance partner in JGR to help with the setup of the car, and Wheels and Jason and the engineers do a great job of putting together a good setup in the car. And Christopher then goes out and drives it, and he shows his skill of being able to drive race cars, loose or tight, he can drive it. And so I think not practicing has been a benefit indirectly to our performance by not being, using his rookie experience in a cup car to lead us down a path, good or bad.
So let me throw this question at you. It's something that's struck me from the observations is we've done around 14 or 15 races in those 2 months that we've been back, right? So you guys know I am but far from a rocket scientist or good at math here, but you're racing once almost every 4 days, right? Do you think it's been beneficial for the team, maybe in that the schedule being so fast and furious the way that it is even if we have a good day or a bad day, it kind of forces you to have a short memory and zero in on the next weekend?
Yeah. That's fair. I think Christopher has a short memory anyway because he's a dirt racer, so he's used to racing every day. So I think that's an advantage for us that he's used to racing every day, and I think he'd race every day if he could. And I think, Tom, to your point, racing every 4 days, I'm not sure if it hurts or helps, but it's a mindset that he's used to. And I think it's also for our guys in the shop, you can't let down for a day. So it's full tilt 24/7, in between races. And it's, we don't have the luxury of being able to do, rotations of employees, our road guys and our shop guys, while being smart and socially distancing, are working full days all day together and trying to, do the best product we can. So it's the same team all the time working on the same cars. And I think our routine has been strong, and our, the repetitiveness of racing every 4 or 5 days on average. I mean, I know we race most Sundays, but we've thrown in, a Wednesday night and a couple of Wednesday nights and a Thursday night race. And we even had a Monday race here because of rainouts. I think having those races, like you said, Tom, with every 4 days, it's been pretty, it's been good for us just to get back to the track. And short memory, yes, good or bad. But I think his mindset from being a dirt racer he's already there. He would race every day if he could.
So continuing kind of to go down the path of, just things that have changed over the last 2 months, we are doing a lot more calls via Zoom. I know that's been a hot topic of discussion for pretty much any area that people might make their living in, right? Even just living their normal day-to-day lives. We see people doing Zoom happy hours, right? As a means of staying in contact with each other. Is that something you see as a means of communication that the team might continue to use down the road, even after we get clear of this pandemic?
I think you'll see a variation of that continue. We have several partners that are on corporate travel bans, and they're for the foreseeable future. So there's not going to be in-person meetings, even when at this time of the season, we're typically having renewal conversations. Those renewal conversations have had to be over Zoom here recently. So yes, I think that will continue. Will it die out after a while? If things get back to whatever normal looks like in the future, possibly. But I think companies are realizing that they can do business without the expense of traveling to be in person. Right or wrong, I think that's a fact that you're going to, that's been declared out there and will continue to see into the foreseeable future. Airline industries are facing that just as much as anybody else, and hospitality industries, where they're seeing a significant decline in business travel, and Zoom meetings and the ability to communicate over the internet is partly to play there, and a solution when they can't get on the plane or drive into different states because of what's going on.
Yeah, I think Zoom calls, to add on top of that, Zoom calls going to be a product of what your business partners are wanting to do. if they want to have Zoom calls, you're going to have Zoom calls. If they don't, then you're going to have telephone calls. They want to meet in person, then you'll meet in person. I think it's too new in the whole program of what's going on to, to say it's going to be here forever or not. But I think for the foreseeable future, I think Zoom calls and Zoom meetings and, conferences via Zoom and, board meetings via Zoom are going to be, here for definitely the near future.
I'll give
not a big fan of Zoom calls, by the way. So
go ahead, JD.
Yeah, well, I was going to say it's like our watch parties we're doing with Procore. We're typically or probably not going to have folks back at the track the rest of this year, guests back at the track. So their way of engaging with customers across the country is through Zoom. And in a case like what they're doing, it actually helps because they can bring more people into the conversation on race day than they typically would if we were live and at the track. So in certain cases, it's beneficial to the partners.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add about the Zoom conversation from my perspective is it almost strikes me as, we joke that I'm the baby of the group, but I noticed that there's kind of there's people that prefer email, right? There's now people there's generations that prefer text messaging, and there's the old school that prefers face-to-face or a phone call. Zoom calls might find their niche as, almost a generational means of communication. And you still got to be well-versed in everything across the board, right? But it'll be interesting to see because we don't know how long this is going to be the preferred mode or the only real mode of communication we have. So we'll see. Who knows?
I just think it's weird that 6 months ago, we didn't Zoom call at all.
Mm-hmm. And
now it's like someone calls you for the first time, emails you, hey, can you want to do a Zoom call? I'm like, no, I want to do a phone call. I don't want. It's almost like dating, right? You don't want to, you want to walk before you run, or crawl before you walk before you run. And Zoom call to me is like running. I don't want to run yet. I still want to email and talk to somebody before I do a Zoom call. So,
and you also have the awkwardness of some people showing their picture and some people not, and you're wondering, what's that person? Why is that person not showing their picture?
What are they doing? Right?
Where are they at?
Yeah,
it's like Tom right now. Where are you at, Tom?
Yeah.
I also love when people choose their backgrounds. Like when you do Zoom calls or we're on Skype, but when you do a Zoom call, you can change the background. I had a Zoom call last night, and the guy was, the guy leading the call he had the tropical Hawaii palm tree picture, and it tells a lot about a person by what the picture they pick behind their background.
So we'll continue. We'll get a little more NASCAR focused again here. We've obviously had to revamp our schedule top to bottom. I would, for this question, let's focus in a little bit more on the observation of, and we'll use Bristol as an example, right? Where we as a race team, Bristol as a track, had really no idea that we were going to be racing the All-Star race there until, let's call it, a month in advance. Let's call it that.
Or less, yeah.
Right, even less than that. What do you think we've learned, Jeremy, with obviously you you running LFR on a day-to-day basis? What have you learned about the flexibility of the race team where, I like to think if before all this went down, we were told, hey, we're changing the track you guys are going to 3 weeks from now, it would have thrown us into a little bit of a tizzy. Yeah. Right. Now it's kind of, we've become more flexible and a little bit more willing to go with the flow, if that makes sense. What do you think?
I think that's a fair statement. I think all the stakeholders in the sport have realized that it's important for us to race every race and put on a good show. And if that means going to Bristol for the All-Star race on a Wednesday, that's what we're going to do. I think everyone in the sport's committed to making the product good and strong for TV as well as those that are able to attend. You had fans at Bristol, you had fans in Texas. But I think for the most part, every stakeholder in the sport has committed to their teams and to the sport and the overall direction of the sport to do what they have to do to put every race on. And I think from doing doubleheader weekends and, Pocono was scheduled with, doubleheader weekends in Michigan, and being flexible is the key to doing this. And we're all in the same boat. It's not like we found out a day before someone else, or another team found out a week prior. Everyone found out at the same time. NASCAR's trying to do the best thing they can to put on the best product and give our fans a great experience. And I think it's our part to work with them to put on a show where and when they tell us to.
So,
but I agree with you. I think last year people would have been in uproar. I think the social, economic, and environment and the pandemic we're dealing with right now, it's hard to complain about something when you have a job and you're going to put on an event that's to provide entertainment and a release for fans. It's hard to be, the first inclination is to be selfish. God, I can't believe this. And you got to think, well, let's figure out how to do this and get it to a point where it's possible to get done. Let's get to yes versus say no first.
Yeah. So along that same line, something that we've seen this year that has been discussed for years as a possibility of things that we'd be interested in doing as a sport were midweek races, right? We have seen Wednesday night races. Again, as we record this, it's July 21st, and we are just a few days away from running Kansas on Thursday night. What, from a business perspective, have been your takeaways for the weeknight races? It's a different kind of exposure, even a different kind of could be attracting different types of viewers on the weeknight slots. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for me personally, I like the midweek races. They tend to be a little bit shorter in distance, and it breaks up the week. We're not traveling to the track, so we're at home watching it on television like most of America. Ratings have not been as great as I think everyone had hoped they would be. But at the same time, you've got races just like, races starting on the East Coast at 7:00. Well, that's 4:00 on the Pacific Coast. And with us having clients and partners in California and up and down the West Coast, it's hard for a lot of those guys to tune in and to be part of the conversation when we're holding a watch party leading up to the race. So it's different for everybody. And from a business standpoint, I think it's neat to break it up. Now, for people going to the races, for partners going to the races, sponsors going to the races, sometimes that can be challenging because you're traveling midweek, and some people are hesitant about traveling right now regardless. But I think there have been a decent amount of partners that have been able to show up to races midweek when they've been invited. So, I think it's a little bit of both sides of the coin. But for me, personally, I'm okay with it. It kind of breaks up, the schedule and the season. And if we can get in the entire season by running these midweek races, that's great. Love it. Let's keep doing it to get everybody to where we need to be at the end of the year.
Yeah, I agree. I love the weekday races. To me, you want to own a night. You want to own a day. NFL owns Sunday. I think we need to find a way that we can own a night or own a day. College football, owns Saturday. I'll say it again. If we can own a day or a night, it'd be the best thing for us. And I think, to JD's point, the ratings aren't what they are or what we thought they would be. But at the same point in time, all TV ratings aren't doing what everyone thought they'd be because there's no new shows on. And, I think people have also, those 10 weeks of shelter in place, whatever you want to call it, I think 10, 12 weeks of shelter in place, I think changed people's habits of living. And I think if you can be outside now and spend time outside and get out of your house and go out and do something with your family and go for a hike or go camping or whatever it may be, I think it's probably taken some of our viewers away, but we've also, I think, attracted new viewers by trying things different, by trying new things and racing on weeknights or doing doubleheader weekends or, moving the All-Star race to Bristol on a Wednesday night. I think if you don't try it, you don't know. And I think we have to keep trying these things as we have a reason to try it. To JD's point, we have to get the races in. And I think the more things we can try and see what sticks, the better off we'll be as a sport into the future.
And I wouldn't give up on midweek races because the TV ratings haven't been where everybody's hoped they'd be. But I think you also need to consider a consistent flow. We've had a Wednesday night race, then we skip a week. We might have another one, skip a week. And so there's not been a consistent,
Right.
like to your point, owning a night. You haven't had a chance to really say, all right, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, I know there's going to be NASCAR on this channel. It's a go-to.
Right.
And that's not been the case. So
yeah. Whereas, Monday Night Football is on Monday night on ESPN at, 8:35 kickoff, whatever it is, right? Everyone knows the time. And NFL tried, remember years ago, NFL tried adjusting the kickoff and moving Monday Night Football up. I think they moved it up earlier. And it used to be at 9 o'clock, and they moved it to, I think, 7:30 or 8. And it didn't work for them. They put it back to where it was. Because to your point, the West Coast feed, they're still at work.
Yeah. I thought it was the craziest thing when we lived out in San Diego. On Sundays, football would start at 11 o'clock or 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. And you're like having breakfast, and all of a sudden football started. You're like, what in the world's going on? It's the craziest.
But at the same point in time, you're done at 4, right?
Yeah.
The afternoon games are done at 4, so it's not like you still feel like you have the better part of the afternoon. Because when I lived in Arizona, we talked about this. We'd go to brunch to the bar and watch the football games on Sunday and have brunch, and then you'd be done by 4 o'clock, and you're like, well, now what do we do? At home, it's 7 o'clock. 60 minutes comes on, and it was time for dinner and bed, right? I mean, now at 4 o'clock on the West Coast, you're like, what do we do now? And I think there's a cool factor to it, but there's also, as far as a national coverage, everything's geared to the East Coast, so that's kind of how it rolls. So
yeah.
Do you think that, obviously, when we foresee getting out of this pandemic, and I think
when's that going to be, Tom?
I'm gonna have to ask someone a heck of a lot smarter than me, man.
Get your crazy 8-ball out and ask the question. Come on.
Seriously. Is there, in your mind, a thought I've had is when we're not forced to run races on a weeknight, right, where we're not doing it out of necessity, are there certain races or even adjustments we can make to a race that make it fit as a weeknight product? Like, in my mind, is a short Martinsville race on a Wednesday night seems awesome, right?
Yeah.
A 500-mile race at Charlotte on a Wednesday night does not seem awesome to me, right? Is there a way to maybe appease the hardcore racing fan with Sunday races that are that traditional 400, 500-mile race, where on Wednesday night, maybe we pick something more, maybe it is a Martinsville, maybe it is a Bristol, but we say, hey, this is a 200, 250 lap race. We're just going to go out there, have fun, and you make it more digestible for a Wednesday night, right? A 2.5 hour Wednesday night spectacle. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Jeremy mentioned earlier, I think that's the way you got to do it. You got those weeknight races can't be 4 hours long. You can't start a race at 8 o'clock and end it at midnight. I mean, we already have, unfortunately, and going back to ratings, we've had some Mother Nature's not helped us when we came back, and we joke if you're in a drought, just send NASCAR to your market because you're going to get rain, and so Mother Nature doesn't help. But unfortunately, our sport gets delayed, and so I think weeknight races have to be within a 2.5, 3 hour window, like football. Football, you sit down at 7 o'clock for a game and you're done at 10. Unless it's the national title game and it's like 12 o'clock. But I think you're 99% of the time when you watch an NFL game, it's going to be 3 hours. You know that a baseball game is going to be 2.5 to 3 hours, right? The basketball game is going to be 2.5 to 3 hours. All these things. I think having a weeknight race, it has to fit in a window of 2.5, 3 hours. And but I also think it's cool. Like Martinsville is cool because to me, it was the first time we raced under the lights in Martinsville. I think making them events are going to be why people tune in.
Yeah, I think I saw Ryan McGee say it on Twitter the other day or here recently that there should only be 3 500-mile races: the Daytona 500, the
Southern
Coca-Cola
500
race, and the Southern 500. 500 or more miles races. So 3 of those throughout the year, and everything else should be 400 or less. And it's a pretty valid point, to kind of keep people interested. I mean, the attention span is much shorter these days with the younger audience, and people expect things immediately now. And when you have to sit there for 3-4 hours to get to the end of the race, that becomes challenging for an audience.
I would agree.
So to wrap everything up here, let's bring it back to be LFR centered again. We've got 8 races left before the playoffs. What are some of the expectations moving forward? Now, I'm not saying are we expecting to make the playoffs or anything like that. What, in name of progression of the race team, would we be looking for this second half of the season, keeping in mind what happened in the first half of the season?
I would say first and foremost, staying within the top 24 is important, as though they do the random draw for starting position. I think my personal goal is I'd like to see us race 2 races competitively back to back versus kind of the roller coaster we've had. We've had one good one, then we've had a situation where it's been self-induced or bad luck or luck in general. I'd like to see more consistent. I think we've raced very well since being back. I'd like to see us race very well consistent now through up Daytona. And then obviously if we're, knock on wood, lucky to make the playoffs or put away and win a race, obviously work our way through those final 9 races to Phoenix. But I won't be heartbroken if we don't, but I think we have to be realistic in where we are. And I think setting the goals that are achievable while having some, strive goals are good, but I think consistency and, just finishing races.
Well, and I think you'll get closer to those goals when you are consistent and finish the races.
Agreed.
I think we get closer to those bigger goals when we're able to do the smaller things.
Yeah, we're not far out of 20th in points. I think we currently sit 23rd. We're not far out of 20th, but also not far out of 28th either. So it's not like
Yeah.
Consistency is, like your point, JD, is going to help us move forward and help us not go backwards.
Absolutely. Well, it was certainly an eventful first half of the season on and off the racetrack for everybody.
It's crazy. One half of the year's done, and we're in the middle of July. Think about that.
I know it's unbelievable to think about. I know JD and I joke sometimes about how I have the original schedule of what the season was supposed to be on my wall here, and every once in a while I look and I'm like, well, you know what? We were supposed to be just coming back from New Hampshire right now. And this was actually going to be that illustrious double off weekend.
Yeah, double off weekend, right? Summer Olympics.
Yep. So we've got no Olympics, and every weekend's an off weekend for me now. So
yeah, that's
this was my trip out. This is my trip out west. Yeah, not happening. So
you can go west, just West Carolina.
But thank you all for listening. We appreciate you sticking with us and hanging out for the first half of the season. We're going to try to do some more fun stuff for the second half with some actual racing content to talk about. So thank you guys both for joining me, and we'll talk to everybody soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.